Hi everyone. I think I'm live. I'm not sure. Um so let me see. I'm waiting. I'm going to add Ruth, I think. Um yeah. Um how's everybody this evening anyway? So I am live. Thank you, Pamela. I'm Ruth Banks. Okay, so okay. I don't know what's happening. There's another screen in front of me, so somebody tell me what I'm going wrong. Oh my god. I may have to get my child in here to give me a hand. Okay. Okay. Okay, so I think I'm alive now, am I? I don't know how this happens at all. Anyway, look, sure, this is the fun of it all, isn't it? I think Ruth is coming. Hi, Ruth.
Hi, how are
That's
you?
fucking
Well
cute.
done. I'm very impressed.
I don't know. I'm having a hot flush here. I can't figure out if it was the menopause or whether it was nerves.
Well, you know what?
That's the
It's the
other end
blind.
of being a midwife.
Yeah, it's the blind leading the blind
Well,
because
that's it.
I'm clueless. So well done.
Okay, well, here we are now. So, I suppose we need to congratulate our fellow midwives and our student midwives on International Day of the Midwife. Um, and we know the theme this year was 100 years of progress, but we might touch on that later. We'll begin at a positive note. So, I suppose I'll say just a little bit about myself and then you can introduce yourself, Ruth. Is that okay?
Okay.
So, my name is Jeannine Webster, and up until recently, I was working in one of the main maternity hospitals in Dublin. I have, as I say, I've recently resigned. That's a long story. I'll tell my story one day. But I really enjoyed it. I've been a practicing midwife for 10 years. I didn't go to college till I was 41, and then I done the undergraduate 4-year degree program. So yeah, I've enjoyed my time. I'm a bit kind of loud and mouthy sometimes. That might get me into a little bit of trouble. But I'm just passionate about women and their choices around their reproductive health and about childbirth. And I don't like the word allow or can I or no. And I think we like to encourage women to keep asking for things. And that's the way I would have practiced as a midwife, always to question and not just accept. And I suppose in my own practice, I summed it up really once by saying, I think sometimes we're afraid to ask for something because we already think the answer is going to be no. And I had myself in that situation a couple of times. On one occasion, I took the brave step and I said, look, I want to do this. And in actual fact, it happened. It was to accompany someone to cesarean section who I'd built a very close relationship with during her pregnancy because she had a history, and she doesn't mind me talking about her story, of sexual abuse as a child. So we built a bond, and she had to have a cesarean because she got very unwell, and she automatically thought, just like home birth, I suppose, she thought I was going to be with her. It doesn't matter, Jeannine, she said, you'll be with me. And I'm like, no, I can't because, I work in the clinic, blah, blah, blah. And I said I was sorry to her and I left her on the ward and I went home that night and I knew she was having her section the next day. But in kind of very late at night, I rang my manager and I said, hey, I'm thinking of asking about this. So it took a bit of getting around certain people and things. But yeah, I went with her and think that's one of the key things about being a midwife is building that relationship. And we don't actually get enough of that in Ireland. But anyway, so we're on here to talk about water birth. So I'll let you introduce yourself now, Ruth.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Ruth Banks, and I have recently, okay, so very, very briefly about me. I qualified as a nurse way back when I was started it. I was only a teenager, I was 17, and I went on and did my midwifery after that, after I had had my first child. So that feels like forever ago. But skip ahead a number of years. I worked for a very long time in the Coombe Hospital, and I worked as at CMM2 level, so as a clinical skills facilitator on labour ward for a good while. And in the same time as doing all of that, I did my master's in midwifery-led care, and I don't know where and how everything came. I always had an interest in normal physiological birth and supporting women. And, you know, when the first sort of suggestion came that somebody could birth off a bed, that they could use birthing balls, or they could go in all fours position, or they could squat, or they could use the stool or anything, I was fascinated and only too willing to support it, and probably came away with a few backaches from supporting different things too. But always loved that, always very fond of it. So yeah, somewhere along the way after I had done my master's journey, I think I just had a penny drop moment and thought, well, you know what? I'm already teaching a whole lot of stuff around perineal suturing, around water birth and stuff like that. That I thought, you know what? I actually, the piece I missed most was the continuity of care. So that led me to home birth. And as you know, Jeannine, I'm only in the last just over a full year from last February, fully immersed, pun intended, into the world of being a self-employed community midwife. And really, just before we jump into water birth, just a tiny bit about that, because
Yeah, please do, yeah.
What struck me today, because I did go to the National Midwifery Conference today, and one of the fabulous speakers, I
think Ruth is just frozen. And actually, I was going to ask Ruth about that conference today. I was very interested to see what was talked about. So, I don't know. Hopefully, it's just temporary. And there's the lovely Maeve saying happy International Day of the Midwife. I think actually it's just disappeared on me for a few minutes. Hopefully she'll ask to rejoin and then she'll finish her story. Yes, there was a conference on in Dublin today for an International Day of the Midwife, and it looked like a very good lineup. I did wonder, there was Stephen Donnelly tweeted from it that he done some kind of like a set up on the stage and answered questions. I think I would have liked to have asked him a few. I'm sure other midwives feel the same. Sometimes when you're in a lot of people say, well, why don't midwives say this, or why don't they say that? But you know, when you're in a hospital setting, you're actually very much, you know, conscious that you are working in a hospital and there's only so much you can say. And here's Ruth coming back, so hopefully she'll be, yeah. And hopefully she'll come up now in a minute. Okay.
Hey, I'm
back.
there
you are. You're back. You just froze.
Sorry, I don't know where was I even at?
You were at the conference, and I was just saying to everybody, it's funny, I was going to say to you after you talked about water birth or home birth and stuff, I was going to ask you about the conference, because I was very interested to see that Stephen Donnelly, well, he framed it as he actually spoke to the participants, and I kind of wished I was there then, because I have a few questions I might like to have asked him. Did he get any kind of response like that, Ruth, or did anybody?
You know what? I
don't
came
mean
in
challenging. I just mean, did anybody kind of, you know?
Yeah, I mean, the conference itself, it was a good networking and opportunity and stuff there. What was actually very interesting that I did want to share with you about that part was at the end of it, Angela Dunn spoke, and she's the national lead midwife for NWIP, so
That's
the
right.
National Women and Infants health program.
Mm.
And at the end of it, because Paula Barry had done a water birth session, but at the water birth session, Sheila Shoiga and also Tracy Armstrong, who they're both users of the service, they spoke and they shared their stories. And what they both highlighted was that they didn't know, or certainly Tracy did, that they didn't know that home birth was a possibility. And that's kind of, you know, I've said it to a couple of people at the conference, used it as an opportunity to say, it needs to be advertised. You can't just tell people there's a private, semi-private, public, and maybe midwives clinic if you're lucky. You need to also say the alternative is you can go to get NHS or NHS, you hear me, HSE supporting home birth, and then that tying in for me anyway, for us as SECMs. To be able to support home birth, one of the tools that we use, because we don't give medication, is water.
Yes.
I mean, to be supplying a drug-free pain relief in something that, you know, even without being pregnant, we all get comfort in water, whether we go for a swim, whether we have a shower, whether we have a soak in a bath. So it's only natural that you would use it then to support you. And beautifully, Tracy, you know, expanded on the benefits she felt about being weightless and, you know, being free of and being more mobile and everything. So, but the positive side of it, and going back to the conference, was that Angela Dunn at the end of it did say that NWIP would be supportive of of water birth. I'm not sure if she went as far as saying ban lifting just yet. And she also requested that the directors of midwifery in the maternity hospitals would support home birth. So that's another nice kind of tie-in and connection. And it was just... It was the response, even though I know some people may say they've heard some of the speakers and conferences before, there was a really wonderful reception for the evidence that was presented at Barry. And I did put a post up, just a snapshot of a couple of her screens for these for the amount of evidence, and the feedback from the floor on people were that they felt now happier because they were armed with evidence. And I know from talking to my own clients in the home birth setting, and hi Hayley, I saw your name up there. What do you call it?
Hayley said she will join us if we like sometime.
Perfect. Well, I always direct people to evidence because you know, you and I have a bias as much as obstetricians have a bias, as much as anybody who's had a bad experience has a bias, or anyone who's maybe watched some TV show and seen something bad happen or heard a story. We navigate towards the drama in life and in TV programs. And what we really need to be doing is sharing the, you know, the warm fuzzy stuff, the oxytocin stuff, so that people's have a chance to actually normalize this. It just needs to be normalized.
I think so. I had a discussion actually with a midwifery colleague of mine, and she's 67, nearly 68, and she won't retire. No, but anyway, she was saying to me the other day, because one of our mutual friends who's going on to your into the home birth or the Community Midwife Association, Sarah. So Sarah will be going out on her own soon. And so Sarah's a mutual colleague of the both of us. And she says to me, "Oh God, Sarah told me, and would she not be afraid, Jeannine, you know?" And I said, "But you're always telling me I wish birth was in hospital was like it was years ago," because she says we didn't interfere so much. And I said, basically Sarah's taken that model and is bringing carrying it out to the home. And she says, oh, okay. She says, like we used to call it the nomads. I said, what? So she says, well, when women came in when they were overdue and they, you know, they were in for induction or something like that, she says, we get them out to walk and they'd be walking all the corridors, she says, and they'd be walking out in the garden. And she said, we used to call them the nomads. But that's just the perspective of somebody from years ago, you know.
Yeah.
And I know my own mum had 2 home births. Actually, my brothers were born at home, and she used to have, like, there was the nurse. Oh God, I can't remember what she used to call her. But anyway, she used to do all their
District.
antenatal. Huh?
The
Huh?
district. Was it the
Yeah, it was like
district
the
nurse?
district nurse. Oh, Nurse Roberts. I always knew the second name because she always never referred to her first name. She always said Nurse Roberts. So Nurse Roberts would look after them with their GP during their pregnancy, and that's just the way it happened, you know. And it was only because she never let me forget. I came 3 weeks late, and they sent her into the hospital because her blood pressure was a little bit high, and she never forgave me for that. But yeah, so go on. Sorry.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure where I was at or if I was on a
Yeah,
point.
yeah.
It's
No, you
it's
were just
always
talking about even the whole thing of the pain relief. I know I said, and I don't know if I'm wrong, but I feel, is there any other area of healthcare when we look at water birth in the home? Is there any other area of healthcare where you would be denied your chosen form of pain relief? Like, it's bizarre, really, when you put it in that context, isn't it, Ruth?
well, yeah, it absolutely is. And one of the other things that came out of today's conference as well was continuity of care. And continuity of care, as evidenced, is out there. We're saying if continuity of care, the way it's so highly rated now, was a medicine or a vaccine, it would be unethical not to give it to everybody.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah.
And yet, I have to say, I thoroughly enjoy my life as an SECM because of the continuity of care, because I know people, I know their journey. And what I'm loving right now as well is most of my clients have been great and they welcome students to follow the journey. And these students are getting maybe an opportunity to realize where they might want to go themselves in terms of their midwifery future.
Yeah, yeah, and just to, because I think my one and only experience of water birth was actually when I done that external placement as a 3rd-year student midwife, and I went out with Colette Donnelly, and I had a great experience. Like, we done a lot of antenatal care, and I'll always remember when we'd seen someone antenatally, and then I got this text, I think it was like on a Friday morning, and I wasn't due to be with her. And she says, such and such is going into labour. And I'm going, oh my God. And she said, do you want to come? She's happy for you to come. And I'm going, I my God. And I had to take 2 buses to get there because I don't drive. And I remember all the way in on the bus thinking, oh my God, nobody knows that there's actually a baby being born now. And the excitement of getting there, you know. And then even when I went home that evening on the train, I'm like, oh my God, I've like witnessed just something so special happen, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah. Yeah.
I often say that around the times, maybe to the student or to the other midwife, you know, you look outside and you think, nobody has a clue what just happened here. You know,
It's just
special
so
has
special,
happened
isn't
here.
it?
And it's like,
Yeah.
why is everybody just doing their daily stuff? Because it's been a wonderful thing. Interestingly, because I've been involved, when you go back to the water birth, I've been involved in, obviously, in teaching in the COOM because it was a very much a part of the whole setup and startup with water birth there and collecting the data, and delighted to have my name as a 2nd or 3rd, wherever it is, author somewhere on Paul Barry's paper. But I also I get to speak in the colleges sometimes to masters or HDIP students too. So it's fabulous. And then I've recently been invited to NMH and to Rotunda. So again, with Paul and I presenting evidence and doing field sessions around it, it's been wonderful to meet people. But the other set of skills from the hands-on midwifery point of view is stuff that sometimes the hospital midwives look at you, not all of them, some of them are tuned in, But when you go to use acupressure, or when you talk
Yeah,
about, the mood setting of the room, stuff that
yeah,
we all know, but somehow there's a part of this that people have forgotten.
yeah.
It's been sanitized and it's been changed, but I do think it's coming full circle because, for example, they're very proud of their new rooms
Yeah.
equipment. They've got
Mm.
dimmer switches, they've got Bluetooth speakers. So this whole thing of creating an environment that's
Yeah,
a little bit less clinical
yeah.
is definitely taking on a little bit and improving. But it's not a patch
No,
on
no, no,
we're
no, not a
not
patch.
a patch on being at home. And the
Yeah,
joy I get is I walk in and I'm a guest in somebody's house.
yeah.
um
It's
we
such an
have
honor. Yeah.
accent social. Now they are educational because I'm a complete birth nerd, but we have all of these things going on, and then I do the checks for it, and I'm
Yeah.
thinking, and that's work.
Yeah.
And I really enjoy it. And over the years, from colleagues, from studies, from study days, from my own kids, yeah, there's definitely wisdoms. And this, I do love the French term for midwife,
Mm.
sage-femme. I just think that's
Yeah, I love
lovely.
it. Yeah,
Wise
yeah, yeah,
woman.
yeah, yeah.
And, with
Yeah.
all of my grey hairs, I'm starting to feel I deserve some of that.
Yeah, same here. I think
Yeah.
Sheena Byram, actually, that used to be her handle on one of her social media accounts, was Sage Femme. Yeah, and where do you think now, when we look towards the ban and that on on home birth or on water birth, where do you think this is going to go, Ruth? Do you think, like, I know AIMS Ireland, in conjunction with the Midwife Association and the Community Midwife Association, have this petition going, and, like, to be honest, for an Irish petition, it's doing quite well. It's like over 2,000 signatories now. Um, are we going to have an impact? Like, what do you think?
I hope so. And I really hope so. And I do believe that it will be reinstated. The problem I have is the length of time it's taking
Yeah,
to reinstate.
yeah,
And
yeah.
the fact that it was put in place in the first thing, it's adding stress to, I mean, one of the reasons women choose to birth at home is because they have some element of control. If they
Yeah.
want to use a birthing pool,
Mm,
they're supplying their own pool so that they can ensure they get to use a birthing pool.
mm,
Whereas, again, going back to the speaker today, it's this kind of stress and fear that maybe I won't actually get into the pool room or into the pool, or
mm.
there may not be a midwife willing or able to,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
competent
yeah.
to support me.
Mm. Yeah.
And that was one of the things, the push today. There's a lot more maternity hospitals with pools. There's a lot more of a push and a drive towards not just using their pools and freeing up the pool room so that it can be
Mm,
used, but there's talk about moving more towards water birth. And I do know that water birth
mm.
is, albeit unplanned, it's happened in a few of the units. So
Okay, okay, okay.
it will definitely get there. The
Yeah.
frustration and
Mm,
and the importance of this petition, and honestly, I beg anybody out there, use their platforms to get everybody to sign, because this isn't just about the woman or the midwife who would
mm.
like a water. This is about your friends, your sisters, your daughters.
Absolutely.
It's about choice. It
Mm,
is a feminist issue. It
mm.
is this
Yeah.
saying, sorry, you can't tell me that I can't. And in my,
Mm,
the frustration I find is, if I'm a guest in somebody else's house
mm,
and evidence supports something that they want to do, I
mm.
really feel there's something terribly wrong in me asking them to leave it.
Yeah,
And I feel a little bit, yeah, I just don't feel I can violate somebody's human rights.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah,
I'm certainly not physically able, and nor would I willingly violate somebody's human rights and their
yeah,
choice,
yeah,
something that the evidence supports. So
yeah.
hopefully
No,
enough people will get riled up to
mm,
keep sharing, keep
mm,
signing, and that it will get somewhere and be lifted. My fear, going back to, I know I'm repeating myself, but my fear is the time it's going to take.
yeah, yeah. I would agree with you there. And it's funny how these kind of things kind of pan out. There's and everything seems to be kind of so secretive sometimes that nobody knows who is actually going to make that decision. Do you know? Um, in a positive note, I think that there has been a massive change in how women maybe consider their reproductive health since we had repeal. I think that they've realised maybe I do have power as such. And I was very struck by so many women's movements that just came out of COVID and the restrictions in the hospital, that women really started to speak out. And I always remember that the march before the doll and stuff like that, and I was, as a midwife, I was just so happy to see that, because I probably, if I wasn't a midwife, I would have been one of them out marching, yeah. So look,
but there's fantastic people on Instagram. I mean, I'm relatively new to Instagram, and it's funny, yeah. But being put out of your comfort zone is always good. But there are some fantastic resources. There's fantastic links to evidence. There's fantastic tips, advice, breastfeeding support, doula support. There's just such great people out there with a wealth of knowledge to share. Women supporting women, and women, finding a voice and saying, what, nobody can tell you what to do. You make your own decisions.
Yeah, one woman has just expressed her opinion, and it's Hayley, who we were talking about before. So Hayley asks, is Stephen Donnelly going to pull each one of us out of the pool? I think not. Yeah, I think you're right there, Hayley.
One of the concerns, I suppose people, you mentioned it earlier about moving from the hospital into home birth, which is what you said about Sarah McCann. I had that move. As I told you, February 2021, I walked out finished my job as such in the Coombe. I still maintain contacts there because it's always great to have contacts in every.
That's really good, because I think you're normalising it even for the midwives in there. Well, that's Ruth with us for years. Now she's out there and she's really enjoying it,
Exactly. But the comments that were made when I was talking about moving and were things like, there was 3 comments. One was seldom used, but I always loved hearing it as, I always thought you'd be great at that. That was always lovely. That's the one I wanted to hear. But more often than I heard things like, and you already said them, oh, you're brave with that head tilt. Or you cannot be afraid, So it was fear and bravery rather than the wealth of knowledge that you have, the evidence you're practicing under, and the recognition of being an expert in normality, that sort of thing. Very, very frustrating. Yeah, very frustrating. And yet, moving into what you have, you've got to trust that the women are the experts in their own body. Like, it's normal for them. And and I love my language has changed, and I keep trying to change it more because I use things. But I know I talk about clients. I no longer talk in the hospital. It was patients. These are clients. These are and most of them have become friends along the way as well. But it's they're clients, and together we work through any issues or navigate evidence, and sometimes my learning from doing the masters in how to research stuff has been great to direct people to maybe more detailed studies if that's what they want or need. But we're not talking about people like when I had my first child, I was clueless. I also began thinking that anybody who wanted a home birth or who practiced a home birth when I was in my midwifery were a bit mad. And I know when I said it about me moving out, I know a lot of my clients don't tell their families that they're planning a home birth they're fearful of that same
Mm,
thing. Oh, you know, safety and
mm,
risk, those sort of terms come up all the time,
yeah.
and it's a little bit sad because the evidence is overwhelming.
Mm,
You know, that birth at home is as safe as birth in hospital, and
yeah,
we all
yeah.
know that going into hospital is important for some people, but it doesn't guarantee that nothing bad is going to happen in hospital or that
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're
there's
so right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I just see that Avril has said there, together we're stronger with our birth worker colleagues. So I think like um, women and midwives together, I think we can achieve much more as that kind of collective as well. You know, your voice is louder. And I think probably women in one way have, as consumers, don't sometimes, I know, as I was saying earlier, it's improved, but sometimes don't realize their power, you know.
I
And but
totally
then
agree.
that goes with the whole thing of, you know, you were brought up to, you know, think that a certain type of care or whatever was the best kind of care, you know, and you don't say no. And if such and such says, we're going to induce you at 39 weeks,
Yeah.
you know, and then the responsibility then is thrown onto the woman too, isn't it? You know, it's like, well, you know, safety and all this kind of stuff, and that's a huge conundrum for women. And as
It
you
is.
say, do you ever find like partners? How do partners kind of? Because I've often read on the home birth page, maybe a woman would want a home birth, but she says, "How do I persuade my partner?" Yeah.
That's a very, and actually I've had somebody recently, and it's almost to interview you, which is fine. I have no problem with it because I'm perfectly happy with the safety records and with my training.
Mm,
So I put a post up on my own page just mentioning about the safety and what we do for it in the home birth setting. But yes, you're right. Partners, and not even partners, but maybe mothers
mm,
of the clients as well, will
mm.
have fears. And most of their reassurances come from knowing we have the ambulance on standby
Right. Okay.
is one of them,
Mm,
and knowing that we must have a second midwife present for the birth
yeah.
or the transfer. So knowing that, and
Mm,
then, you know, I usually tell people, or certainly it's on that post I put up, which isn't a very long post,
mm,
but we have to sign every year. We sign a memorandum of understanding.
mm.
Um, Contract, and we have to sort of show evidence of all of our skills and drills and
Yeah.
training, so that
Absolutely. Yeah.
adult resuscitation, neonatal
Mm,
resuscitation, amongst a whole lot of other things,
mm,
which include like manual handling and stuff that way too.
yeah.
And I know from when I was working in the hospital setting, I
Mm,
know that wasn't checked up on people as scrupulously as it
yeah.
is with the way I'm working now. I was always conscientious. I told
Mm,
you I'm a birth nerd. I was always conscientious of those things as well because I feel I'm accountable for my own practice.
mm,
But it wasn't, you didn't have to annually or even every second year, you didn't have
mm.
to come up with your proof of compliance, shall we say,
Yeah.
with
I have a lot of things it's every two
mandatory
years.
training.
So, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the fact, I think, and then looking at the equipment that we carry, and then when we
Mm,
talk about having to set up a resus area, and when we
yeah.
tell people, which we do at the booking visit,
Mm,
of some of the things that could happen, and I know very many of the other people who may or may not be listening now use the BRAIN acronym. You talked about
yeah.
it for decision
Yeah. I know
making. So we
Sarah
talk
used to
about,
use it quite a lot, even at work. Yeah.
oh, absolutely. So the
Mm,
benefits, the risks, the alternatives,
mm,
what your intuition is, and what if you do nothing at all.
yeah.
And that is a wonderful, that's a wonderful tool to keep going back to, and just to
Mm,
keep reminding women that they have the power, is what you mentioned
yeah.
earlier.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
have the power. And, you know, finally, one of my other colleagues in self-employed community midwife would say, we're not here to convince people to do it.
Mm,
You know, nobody has to come. They come to us looking for it. So we're not
yeah.
chasing people down in the street. Come, you must have a home birth. Which would be funny, wouldn't it?
Mm. Yeah.
But
Yeah, I do
yeah.
think we could probably maybe highlight home birth, as you said at the beginning. It's sometimes it's very invisible. I made that point recently at some online midwifery conference. I don't know what it was, and like some services are totally invisible, even within a hospital. Like you find the Domino service, the community midwives, that women aren't aware that that
Mhm.
is there. And I,
Mhm.
for years, worked in a kind of private, semi-private setting, and a lot of women would come in, and maybe more so in the private, because our semi-private they used to see midwives every visit as well, so that was a big bonus. But they would say, when you were doing their booking history, and they'd say to you, "Oh my goodness, am I going to see you all during the pregnancy?" And I go, "No, you don't see a midwife at all." And I didn't, obviously, not as bluntly as that. You know, I said, "I'm always here. You just knock on the door. That's no problem." But I don't think people realise there's not enough out there, for one, but there is things out there, other options for them, and home birth is one of those. Yeah.
Yeah, this is it. It's an option, and
Mm.
if you meet the criteria for it, it's a really good option. Visibility, you're absolutely right. So many of my clients, and myself included, would
Mhm.
say it's one of the best kept secrets.
Yeah.
If you know of somebody who's availed of the HSE service in particular,
Mm.
because it's free,
Mm.
it is amazing, and yeah, people don't know about it. And in fact, today, in the networking at the conference, I did take the opportunity to try and nab and bend anybody's ear who I could on
Mm.
stuff. And I did speak to Dr. Cleena Murphy, who's
Okay.
the obstetric lead
Yeah.
on it, and I just said, the choice that people get is, in terms of being offered a type of care, is private, semi-private, public, or midwives clinic, but they don't
Mm.
mention HSE home birth.
No.
And it's a service that should be it should be advertised.
Mm.
Everybody at booking,
Absolutely.
it should be advertised, and
Mm.
not just you asked about it, okay, I'll tell you. It should
Yeah.
be up on the wall along with
Mm.
every other option of what somebody could do. It should be
Yeah.
available for
Yeah.
people.
Mm. Oh no,
And, and,
definitely.
and,
Yeah.
and sorry, one other thing on the visibility of it
Mm.
is, compared to, say, when I started out, social media, you and I having a chat here now,
Mm.
plus all of the different pages and
Mm.
the rabbit hole that you go down when you become pregnant,
Mm.
you suddenly feel, and I know Hayley will answer
Mm.
correctly, I had her almost doing a degree. I gave
Yeah.
her that much
Well,
stuff and
Hayley,
she read it
you're
all in
welcome to
patiently.
join us at any stage if you want. I'm just saying that to her. If she wants to be added into the conversation, we'd be
Yeah.
more than happy to have her. Yeah, go on.
But,
Sorry.
no, but that's the thing. It's just when you're buying a new phone, you read everything about it. When you're
Mm.
buying a piece of equipment, when you're pregnant, you read up about it. And
Mm.
for the other side of the thing is GPs. Is a whole other
No,
minefield.
that's a whole other thing. Absolutely.
It is,
Yeah.
because you get either people
Wow.
incredibly supportive, or
Mm.
what one of my clients told me last week was, she said, I didn't know if my appointment was finished or not, but the GP stopped talking to me, rolled their eyes and stopped talking to her. And it's just like,
Yeah, and we
it's just,
know that is an issue. It definitely is an issue.
yeah.
And for
It's
some
not your
GPs,
first
it's,
port of call. When you're
huh?
pregnant, that's your first stop. When you're
Yeah.
pregnant, your
Mm.
GP.
Yeah,
So,
definitely. And
yeah.
I know then the other issue with that is not always the GP, it's the insurance company that is ensuring that GP practice will not let them
Yeah.
practice or support a woman who's on a home birth pathway. Yeah, it's
No, I know.
mm,
Yeah, so there's a lot of sadness in it, but again, I go back to it, and being able to campaign. If you were walking on the street trying to get
mm,
signatures for the campaign of removing the ban, it would be a lot
mm.
harder.
Yeah,
Social media does give us platforms to share
mm,
with people,
yeah,
and to share when things are good as well as when things are bad, and
yeah,
when there's injustices happening and
mm,
stuff too. And yeah, some of the platforms are easier or nicer to use than others. Some of them are a little bit addictive because you just suddenly find more and more you can look at. But no, there's good stuff out there, and I
mm,
think for women who are pregnant now,
Mm.
um, when they find a few good sites to go to, there's a wealth of knowledge out there being shared,
Absolutely, yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm
and
just
I think it's
reading
wonderful.
somebody has said here, just going back to the GP thing. So it's, is it Hama Love Science or Hama Love Science? I attended my GP at 8 weeks for a unit referral, mentioned I was booked for a HSE home birth and was politely told I was on my own. So, exclamation mark.
And some of
Right.
my clients have changed GPs because
Yeah,
of how they've been treated as well.
yeah,
And
yeah.
honestly, some of the language used, some of the fear mongering, some of
Mm,
the you're being selfish,
mm.
some stuff. Now, I promise you, there's good people out there
Yeah.
too.
Oh,
But
absolutely. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, some of that stuff that's there is just outrageous. So
yeah.
we should be using my service, my say, and we should be complaining against people who are fear mongering.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh,
You know, it's
yeah,
not
I would
right.
agree, totally, yeah. So, yeah, so is there any questions out there if anybody wants to ask us something or somebody wants to come on? I did say to Hayley if she wants to, but I don't know if she's still online. She said to me she might be putting the little guy to bed, so maybe that's it. If anybody, Pamela Pilates. I'm looking at you. She says, having a look at home birth stats versus the hospital that you were birthing in. So she's suggesting people do that. Wait till you see. Um,
And just actually, when
yeah.
you're talking about stats, I did bump into Edel from NPEC,
Okay.
Edelma, and she said our stats will be coming out soon. But you
Yeah.
know, it is a little bit sad to say that we're still less than 1% of women
I
who are birthing.
know. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
However, our
Yeah.
data doesn't count in private midwives, and it
Mm,
doesn't count in the home births that happen with the National Maternity Hospital. So
mm,
I think there's a distortion of some of the stuff. So it
yeah.
would be interesting if we could all collate our data a little bit better.
I know. And
Okay.
as I remembered it, I don't know about during COVID, but when you used to get the stats for home birth, they were like 2 years old nearly before they were added or something like that. Like it's quite bizarre, you know?
It is. And to be
Yeah.
fair, Ashley Dixon is great. We
Oh,
sent her,
it's
all of
fantastic.
us sent her our
Mm,
stuff, and magically she comes up with fantastic
yeah,
infographics, information, everything,
yeah.
and it's so valuable to share. And
Mm. The video
you
today
know,
was fabulous as well. That I think Ashleen and Anya organised that. Yeah.
which
Um, the
of the video.
video, yeah, was
To be fair,
beautiful.
that was Ashling. Ashling did it, and then of
Yeah,
course Anya is our whiz kid at
yeah.
doing all social media stuff. So
Okay.
she was charged with getting it up onto Insta, and then the rest of us are pretty good at sharing, but
I
the
know.
getting is
Well,
challenging.
every time I step into something, I don't really know how to do it, but I give it a go. Just like this evening, you know. My son says to me, well, Mum, what are you at now? And I said, I'm just not available between halves. I text my daughter as well, don't ring me. Now, she's since sent me a message. But the male doula, actually. So we have a male doula here asking questions. So he said, isn't thinking an ambulance on standby almost making it a reality?
Oh, so let me explain about that.
Yeah.
When we book somebody and we go through their booking visit,
Mm,
they fill out what we call an ambulance form, and basically it just has basic details of the client,
mm,
where they've booked to birth their baby, so what hospital, and
mm,
directions to their house.
mm,
So if, for example, I'm attending somebody for a home birth and we've decided that she is actually in labour,
mhm,
uh, I'll tell her, look, I'm just going to let the ambulance know. I make a phone call to the National Ambulance Service. I
yeah.
tell them, give them the mum's details,
Mm,
which they already have. They pull up on their file, and I say,
okay.
I don't need you now,
Mm,
um, but I just want to let you know I'm attending for a home birth.
mm,
And most of the time, they don't hear anything from us. Now,
mm,
obviously, if we do call for a transfer, then they've got our file there, if you like, and they
Yeah,
know about it and they can
yeah.
come to. But most of the times, we'll ring when we're on our way home,
Hmm.
when birth has happened. There's been tea and toast. It happens at home too.
Yeah.
The showers, and family are tucked up in bed nicely to recover, and we leave. And on our way home, we ring the ambulance service again, and we
All
say,
right.
"Look,
Okay.
just letting you know that a home birth happened here. Everything was well, and we don't need you, so you can stand down." So it isn't actually that they're waiting on the corner
Yeah,
of. So yeah, not to confuse that,
I
but
know it's
it's
important. Yeah.
the details which were collected from booking. They have them there to use for
Yeah. Yeah.
directions and stuff like that.
Yeah, and that was funny actually, because going back to, as I say, the midwife I was talking to, and a kind of an older midwife and very experienced. And when we were discussing Sarah going out into the community, and previous to that, we'd been discussing doing our, your every 2 years you do your NRP, so that's neonatal resuscitation, and we also do something in my hospital was called ROE, so it's you go through all the
Oh
drills of an emergency. And she said something like, I don't see why I have to do that MRP again, she says, at my age. But anyway, she says, we don't have, we don't have all that equipment here. And then when we started talking about Sarah, and she was saying, but what would Sarah do if something happened to a baby when it came out? And I said, well, Sarah probably has more equipment in her car or what she's brought into the house than
You
you
know,
probably have.
yeah. So you become like a Tetris packer.
Yes.
We all have the matching emergency bags in our cars.
Yeah.
And to use the example of, and we also, by the way, so the emergency drills, most of the hospital do them. They're called, depending on the hospital, but
Prompt. Some do prompt, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah.
there's Comet, different places have them, but they're basically obstetric emergency drills.
Yeah.
Happily, of more recent times, the Centre for Midwifery Education,
Mm.
they run a day for obstetric emergencies.
That's right, for a home birth midwife.
So the midwives from NMH as well, because they do their home birth service,
Yeah.
and then the midwives from the self-employed community midwives group, we go in and we do a setup that's particularly directed and simulated to mimic the home birth setting. So
Okay.
for example, when we do the neonatal resuscitation program, they take cylinders of oxygen. We all carry cylinders of oxygen. They have, we show them either the manual mucus extractors that we have, so the suction or the bulb suction, because we don't have plug-in suction machines. But so we carry these equipment, and basically they work the same way as the Neopuff is what they use in the hospital, and that works from a continuous flow of oxygen, but we have what you call a T-piece. So it works in the same way for giving breath to baby. And
Mm.
then I think most of my colleagues and I carry a neonatal ambu bag, so that if for any reason my T-piece needs the oxygen to work, and if I ran out of it or whatever, then that I can go back. So we all have this kind of old school backup in our things. So we might have a battery operated Doppler for listening to the baby, but we'll have a Pinards as well, so that if any equipment is either not working or whatever, that we can go to our backup. And then because we have to have a second midwife at the birth as well, our second midwife carries their emergency equipment in the car.
Okay. Okay. So I didn't know that actually. No, myself. Yeah.
Our second midwife has the same kit as you have. So we've everything from, so if the woman is maybe going to, if she bleeds or something, we have emergency drugs that we've given to her around 36, 37 weeks, and they're in her fridge, or she's
Okay.
got them through a prescription she's given, and we leave them a birth pack. So we have equipment then to deal with in our emergency bag as well, to put in IV cannulas and give fluid if we want, to put in a urinary catheter. So everything that would be done in the hospital can be done by us.
at
Okay.
home.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
We call the ambulance to bring us to the hospital.
Mm.
And while we also make a phone call to the hospital labour ward to say that we're on our way in.
Yes.
But let me be really clear, like most of the transfers that happened are not what we call blue light transfers.
Yeah.
They're, look, we probably need to go in now. I'm going to ring that, and it's usually very, very calm and coordinated because
Okay.
we try not to wait for bad things to happen.
Mm.
We try
Yeah.
to recognize a change in something and then we
Mm.
act accordingly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And do you think there was a time where an independent midwife kind of going into that hospital setting, maybe it wasn't as warm and inviting as you would like, but is that changing now, Ruth?
I hope so. I
Yeah.
certainly feel the likes of me going to the conference today
Mm.
and doing the teaching in the hospitals, I
Yeah.
feel it's part of me maintaining relationships. I think
Yeah.
it's really important that we maintain relationships with our midwifery colleagues. I take students with me. They know
Yeah.
I'm doing as a home birth midwife. They're going back to the hospital and they're able to say, no, that you're saying this, that's not true. That doesn't happen because I was out there and I
Yeah.
experienced it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think it's opening conversation, sharing, and it's not that mystic
Mm.
person doing something mad on their own. It isn't that way at all. And it shouldn't be that way. I mean, there's so much evidence to support it and we need the hospital to be our friends. So I'd
Yeah.
be really horrified if I went in and met that bad reception. I'm sure there's probably times where people feel a stressful greeting. I'm sure there probably are.
Yeah.
But it could be that
I think
no,
it's changing though, and I think the more of you guys who are hospital-based midwives who have gone out there after such a long time, like going back to Sarah. Sarah's what, 10, 11 years qualified. So I think the more that happens, huh?
I qualified in 91.
Oh, there you go. You see, and and in Francis, just now to let people know. So there is a few more people now after coming out to support home birth in the community. So we've Sarah and Darry Reid as well. Is that right? Yeah.
So in
And
a couple of years, Sarah and Darry came out this year. I
oh,
was previous year, and
mm,
I only realized myself in the number of years, maybe 5 or 6 years back.
yeah.
Um, Carolyn Coughlin, Ali
Oh, that's
Murphy,
right. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
they all started. So, like in Dublin, it's a big increase in the
Yeah.
last 2 years for 3 new SECMs to come
Yeah.
out is fabulous.
It's
And I
great.
can tell we're all busy. We're
Yeah. Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
we have to turn people away,
I
but
know.
we
Yeah.
see, and there's work there for people. There's work for more of them to come out, and I think as the word is being shared from people through positive experience, and the
Yeah.
national survey of experience from 2020 was just
Mm.
so
Positive
positive.
about home birth and women's experience. Yeah.
And it was the most highly rated service. And what
Yeah.
I would say to anybody when they talked about continuity of care, it's the only, in my opinion, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's the only within the HSE, it's the
Mm.
only service for pregnancy that has continuity of care.
Oh, absolutely. Like, I know people like to say, oh, our hospital does community midwifery or our hospital does whatever. But for the majority of them, for one, it's quite select. The areas they go to are quite small, and your applicability to get onto it's quite narrow. And then plus two, it's not a caseload model. It's you could have one midwife at your booking, and right, they all are part of the same team and they communicate brilliantly and all that. But you're not actually seeing that one midwife, which is unfortunate, you know?
Yeah, there's no guarantee. I mean,
Yeah.
you will get very good service,
Yeah.
but if
Oh,
talking
yeah.
continuity
Yeah.
care,
Yeah.
right from your pregnancy through to the labour and birth, through
Yeah.
to the postnatal period, and the other, just to add into it, and I know water birth was what we kind of came on about, but for somebody home birth, Even or who's planning a home birth, even if they transfer into the hospital, they still get those 5 postnatal visits.
Yes, which is great. It's fantastic. Yeah.
Especially when we talk about breastfeeding, where people need support, it's to get those visits that
Yeah,
help support
and
sometimes.
yeah, your stats for breastfeeding are just unreal. Like, it's great, and it just shows what that continuity model can do in relation to confidence when you're transitioning to motherhood, which is totally, nobody ever tells you how you're going to feel, or, and I think one of the biggest gaps, and I think it is going to be addressed, I don't know if they mentioned it today, is there some kind of, sorry, that's my puppy. That's my baby now. Stop. But what was I saying? Oh God, my head. Oh yeah, postnatal care is so it's just bereft of support, and women go home. One visit from the public health nurse, who are doing an absolutely stellar job out there, but that's it, and then we wonder about all our different, our different rates, our rates of breastfeeding, the incidence of perinatal mental health. Sometimes people just need to be able to talk about their experience, kind of, and that can take, as you say, it takes a few visits, and then people can just kind of settle into it,
Yeah, not to be repeating it every time, because somebody they know you.
Yeah.
The other lovely thing, you mentioned the great public health nurses. They're not fully aware of what we do as SECMs,
No.
at least some aren't.
Yeah.
But they must be delighted, because we see our women, we see for like 2 weeks after the birth. So by the time we discharge them, the babies have kind of, babies and moms are settling into their relationship. They're putting on weight. They're well established, and it's more like a social meeting then.
Yes. Yeah.
You've hopefully dealt with any issues along the way in those first 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So
Pamela Pilates is saying Irish women, birthing people, are lucky to have you all, and how right she is. Like, as a hospital-based, resigned hospital-based midwife, I'm always just in awe of that, and I wish it was something that was for me to go into, but it just isn't, for reasons beyond my control. But no, but I'm just in awe of, if I had a chance to attend a home birth, whatever, every day, I would. I just think the experience sticks with me, and that was over 10 years ago, Haley just tells us that the little guy's not going to bed. He should have been gone an hour ago, but she's still listening to us. So I wonder if anybody has any questions. Everybody's a little bit shy, I think. Or as you are, as things go, probably trying to listen to this and having a little baby on their lap or whatever. Yeah, so the other thing I was going to ask, did they discuss postnatal care at all today? Or
well, there's a new breastfeeding, what's the right word for it? There was a new release of breastfeeding, what was it, strategy or whatever that came out. There was, I'm sure I have it somewhere, that was released today. Was it guidance or something? Anyway, forgive me for not remembering it exactly. And yeah, I mean, I think it's continuity of care. Somebody from the UK came over. She was keynote speaker. I'm sorry, I'll just see if I can find her name. Trixie.
That's right. Ashleen Dixon was talking about her.
Yeah, I'm trying to see her.
I'm going to put the dog outside. Excuse me, everybody.
Macquarie. So she was speaking about the UK models. And talking about continuity of care. And she's staying overnight, so she was offering a masterclass to the directors of midwifery to try and bring in something on that as well. Because
great.
The rates of, I mean, we all know it, and this is why the doula care is growing, because people need that support ongoing.
Yeah.
So we do in the home birth setting, what we do with that continuity of care is huge, but there is also a wealth of other supports that people have, and for people who maybe have their families there, wonderful, but sometimes people need somebody else there, and for a while it's that a lack of understanding of what doulas are for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But having met and worked with a few of them, no, that's it's definitely something that's really going to positively help support women who need the support.
Well,
And
Pamela's just asked a question there. Pamela Pilates, she's just asking, it might be helpful for us to explain why birthing in water is safe for baby. It's a question that she's often asked, because I know Pamela does an awful lot of work.
okay, so I'll tell you a couple of things about it. Well, first of all, the number of women who are selected for home birth meet the same criteria of people who are suitable for water birth, according to the evidence and the studies. And babies have a dive reflex. So once everything is healthy and well, and you're not concerned about any issues along the labour as well, babies have protective measures, and what makes a baby breathe underwater, because I suppose compared to land, that's the only real difference or concerns that you have, that a baby might take a breath underwater. And why they don't do it is because the stimulation, there's certain stimulation. So along their facial, along in their face, along the trigeminal nerve, they get stimuli from changes of pressure. So if they're underwater, they've got that hydrostatic pressure there that kind of makes them probably have this kind of a lack of realization or awareness of being born yet. So they're underwater when the head is being born.
Yeah.
And when they surface and come to air, the change in temperature also sends this, oh, I am born now, I can take a breath. This is kind of on a very, very superficial way to explain it.
I know, but isn't Mother Nature fantastic?
Yeah, but that's why when water births in particular, when we teach about it, we don't touch the babies either. So it's a great protective thing for mums and their perineums, that we are kind of we teach not to touch, because we're not touching at women, but the touch could potentially stimulate the baby as well. So this is why I say we don't touch, and then when the pressure that's all around the baby from being in water, and anybody who's been at a water birth or had a water birth, they may notice that sometimes these babies are so calm because they don't have a realization yet that they're born.
Yeah.
And they sometimes take a little while to come around, but it's taking that little time, checking through the baby's cord that everything is okay on it as well, and giving them that little bit of time to transition to extrauterine life. But so those features, why it's safe is because you're putting in a low risk person into the water. And then because of all of the data that's been collected and comparing land births with
Paula Barry's done a lot on that as well, hasn't she?
I took pictures of a couple of her slides on the evidence, and Marit Bjoberg, I can always stumble across her name. She did like a study of over 35,000 women, and like 17,530 in water, and the same number on land. She matched them for a whole load of different variables, and then even it's not printed yet, but Ethel Burns, who is one of the gurus in the UK, it's into over 100,000 people have been compared, and that's in. So I did take a photo of them, and I put them up on a post just to sort of let people see where the evidence is. They can look up further, but it's just a summary of what the study is basically saying in a one-liner on it as well.
Well, maybe one evening, if we can persuade Paula to join Instagram. I was talking to her yesterday. Maybe she'll come on and talk about it.
Yeah, I asked her again today, and the feedback from a lot of the midwives at today's conference after listening to her was one of the things I picked up. One of the pointers I picked up was gratitude for having an awareness now of the evidence, because We do often work in a place of fear, fear of judgment by our peers, and fear of doing something that's wrong or against evidence, or not fully understanding it. So to have the evidence there to be able to come up with, to be able to quote, and just to point out as well, like whatever international evidence, that paper that Paula did has been followed as well. Maria Piedado did another one recently as well, just published this year. So the evidence.
My mantra always was from women in the clinic was there's power in knowledge. Like, go out there, as you said previously in the chat. Prepare yourself. Like, if you're going out, going out to buy a car, or you look at all the different things, what suits you, what your whole thinking is. So it's the same with birth. What is my thinking around birth? Do I have concerns about something, and looking for good evidence. And a midwife will always direct you in that way. There's another question here. We leave this the last one, and then I think we're on. Oh, a whole hour is gone. And you said to me, now, Jeannine, I hope we're not going to be on long. So it's just
shut up.
So Hilary Keogh. So Hilary said, hi Ruth, in terms of locations other than Dublin, where else are self-employed community midwives for mothers to avail of home birth? Are there plans or demand for this? My friend would love a home birth and she's based in Kilkenny. I think doesn't Brenda Campbell O'Toole, yeah.
So
that's a midwife.
Yeah, so you should be able to look up on the HSE site. If you type into Google search for HSE home birth, you will see a list of midwives. You can also type in and look up for Community Midwives Association, and may need updating, but you'll see some of the midwives who are around the country. Sadly, there are some areas that are not serviced yet, and that is something that has to be rectified.
And there is obviously, I know we didn't mention them, was Private Midwives Ireland. I know they're around the country as well, and that I think they have expanded to 2 different areas I've seen recently. So, people can also look at that. I never thought of that actually. And
they were slightly different. They work under slightly different guidance.
I know that. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah,
NHS based, because that's where they get their clinical indemnity from the UK.
Right. Yeah.
But and you just have to look up and see where you can find and so there's some differences on it as well, but yes, they are around.
Actually, and you were saying about being updated. I was on actually the HSE website yesterday, and I was happy to see that the newer recruits like Dari and that their names were already up on the HSE. So that's updated. So that's really good, So, So I think we'll say goodbye to everybody. Oh, the Domino Midwives just joined. We'll wave at them because they're doing great work out in the National Maternity Hospital. And I have to say their Instagram page is brilliant. We're really enjoying all the info that they're giving out and everything. It's great. So we'll say goodbye for now, and we'll probably revisit this kind of mode of chat again. I think it's very valuable, and obviously we'll concentrate on other areas at different times. Maybe that's the way for us to go. And it's lovely that you're on the Community Midwives Association and I'm the Midwives Association of Ireland, and it's great that we can do these things together. So thanks very much, Ruth, and hope to see you soon. Bye, and goodbye everybody. Thanks very much. Bye.